everyone, welcome back to 996 The Howl. Still having a rough go of it. At least we had the middle of the season where it felt good and exciting to watch Coyotes games, but it's kind of finishing how it started, and maybe a lot of fans are at the end of the rope with this team. We cannot go through this pretty much again. Maybe next year, we still don't know the direction the team wants to go for next year's draft, but we cannot continue this trend. And let's just talk about how we got to where we are and how do we get out of it, and if the Coyotes plan this draft is different from previous lottery drafts. And it is. The draft picks I have on here are first and second round, and you'll notice we have 3, 2, 3, and 2, and this year we have 7. It used to be 8, but we traded the lowest value second round pick we had for Jack McBain. It was held by Vancouver, and the other second round draft picks we have are, I believe, Islanders, San Jose, Philadelphia, and then our own, and they're all below Vancouver. So that was our lowest valued second round pick. Let's get into it. A lot of bad luck in these years. It's actually amazing to just go back. I know I lived these drafts, but to actually, with hindsight, realize what happened and how we stopped this from happening. And if it does happen again, that we have that backup plan to prevent the detrimental effects of luck and the lottery. So let's get into it. I didn't put the 2014 draft up here because, honestly, when I saw that they picked Perlini 12th overall, and some players after Perlini were Pasternak, Larkin, Tuck, and Jacob Verana, I just shook my head and couldn't believe it. So let's get into this. The McDavid draft, Coyotes finished second last. So, this season they might finish second last or last. They're 7 points from third last. So it's firmly concrete. The Coyotes are finishing in the last 2 spots, but that still doesn't mean it's going to be a great draft. So they finished second last. Last place was Buffalo. Third last was Edmonton. They win the lottery. They jump to first overall. They pick McDavid. Buffalo picks Eichel. And then the Coyotes pick Dylan Strome. Fourth goes to Marner on the Leafs. So thankfully we fired our GM for that. Don Maloney was the GM at the time. Our second first-round pick was Nick Merkley, who was traded in the Taylor Hall trade. Obviously, Strome traded in a Nick Schmaltz trade. And then Fisher, our only second-round pick that season, but nowadays 32 would be the first round, last pick in the first round due to Vegas and Seattle coming in the league. So Fisher, technically a first-round pick in the eyes of today. He's still on the team. He's a restricted free agent at the end of this season. He earns $1 million. I would expect him to be re-signed for the same or less. He's a Bill Armstrong type player, big physical guy, good on the fourth line. He could be a bit more physical. He's more of a gentle giant, but he's a fan favorite. He's been around for a long time. Wouldn't be surprised to see him re-sign, but if they have to move on from Fisher, it would be tough, but he doesn't really make too much of an impact, if I'm being completely honest. So that was the 2015 draft. They finished with 56 points. Right now they have 49 points. They play Chicago tonight, which will probably be a win. And then their next season was a bit of a bounce back. They injected a whole bunch of young talent in Domi, Duclair. They had Connor Murphy playing an established NHL role. Tobias Reeder. Martinuk was there. So they had an injection of young talent. They had a huge bounce back from the previous year. Finished with 78 points. And despite playing well and having a bounce back year, they had their best draft. So, it seems like with the Coyotes, the lower they pick, third or higher they pick, third, seventh, fifth, they did better picking later in the first round with Keller and Chychrun. They traded up to get Chychrun with the Detroit Red Wings by taking on Datsuk's contract. No second round picks. What are you going to do there? But what's funny with this is that they had the same identical record as the Winnipeg Jets, same number of points. The Coyotes had a worse goal differential than Winnipeg. However, they had two more wins in regulation or overtime compared to Winnipeg. So Winnipeg got 25th place out of 30. Coyotes get 24th place out of 30. And guess who won second overall that year? Winnipeg. So, it's a luck of a draw. The Winnipeg Jets obviously picking Patrick Laine that draft. So the Coyotes were two regulation wins as opposed to shootout wins from having Patrick Laine. Just things like that. Even though, Keller and Chychrun, this was a great draft. The first draft of John Shaika, taking over from Don Maloney. This is when I became a believer in John Shaika. It really took me a long time to realize the mistakes John Shaika did because he had an insane first draft where Keller and Chychrun are hopefully our core moving on. And they're established NHL players who play to an elite level. Obviously, Chychrun took a step back this year, and Keller had a few rough seasons after his rookie year, but had a career pace this season before he got injured. So really happy with this draft. Disappointed there weren't any second-round picks, but thankfully this year they corrected that. So moving on from this season, we go to 2016-2017 where they take a step back. They finish with 70 points. They finish third last. However, because this was Vegas's first draft, they moved Vegas in third last place. So that pushed Arizona to fourth last, which doesn't make sense. Like, it literally doesn't make sense how they just gave Vegas the third overall and pushed Arizona out of that to fourth. And then on top of that, 3 teams won the lottery. This was an insane draft, honestly. New Jersey jumped from 27th to 1st, I believe. And then Philadelphia won second overall, even though they were 19th last. They had a 2.5% chance to win that pick. And then Dallas won third with they finished 24th. So a lot of teams that finished ahead of Arizona in the draft order won their lotteries. All 3 of the first picks were won. That demoted all the other teams down 3 spots. This was the year the Avalanche had like one of the worst records in the post-lockout era. They finished with 48 points that year. Coyotes right now 49 points. Like I said, they play Chicago tonight. So imagine you're Colorado. They basically had the same terrible season as the Coyotes right now. They did everything right. They finished last, and then they get demoted 4 positions down to 4th place. They end up picking Cale Makar, which ended up being one of the better picks that year because he, Shear, Patrick, and Heiskanen, I would have Makar over those 3 players. So it ended up working out for the Avalanche. And then the Coyotes traded their first round pick, and at the time I liked this move, but growing over the years, having this channel for so long, listening to the hockey guy religiously, you should not be trading your first round picks unless you're a consistent playoff team. If you haven't sniffed the playoffs, you should not be trading your first round pick. And the Coyotes decided to do that with trading their 7th overall for Derek Stepan and Antti Ranta, who are both not on the team, who both left in free agency. So the Coyotes got nothing in return from them. And then 23rd overall, they picked Pierre-Olivier Joseph, who was traded in the Phil Kessel trade to Pittsburgh. He's still not a mainstay on Pittsburgh, so he's having a rough development going over there. And then in the second round, they got Westerlund, who still hasn't come over to the NHL. He's still playing in Europe. This is the last season the Coyotes have his NHL rights to. I doubt they retain his rights, so he might become a free agent. Don't hear too much buzz around Westerlund at all. So that was a bad luck for the Coyotes. They were slated to pick 4th overall, so that would have been Cale Makar, and then 3 teams win the lottery, pushing them down to 7th. Obviously, there was no one Chaika like that 7th. It was Elias Anderson, that was picked by the New York Rangers, who barely played for them, and he left to LA, and then he might be out of the league right now. So, shouldn't trade your 7th overall. If you don't like what's there, try something else. But trading it, I knew what they're trying to do. They wanted to establish a core team and move on from this bad year. This wasn't even a bad year, but it seems odd that they traded it away. They could have used that. That seems to me like a Vancouver Canucks trade they did in the past summer, where they traded Gunther for OEL and Garland. I'm sure the Canucks would rather have Gunther moving forward next season. Like, they're doing good under Bruce Boudreau, but now imagine they add Gunther next season. That might propel them to tops in the Pacific. Not top number 1, but top 3 for sure. So we move on to 2018 draft, where it's another bad season. This was Rick Tocchet's first season. I believe Rick Tocchet was hired right before this draft. So this was Rick Tocchet's first season. A whole bunch of new players. It started off the exact same way as this season, going winless in their first 12 games. They finished 29th out of 31, so third last. However, the Carolina Hurricanes, with a 3.3% chance, won 2nd overall, and Montreal won 3rd overall, who finished 28th. So that knocked down Arizona 2 spots to 5th overall. They picked Barrett Hayton, which was a pretty okay choice. The only player after Hayton that matters now is Quinn Hughes, but the Coyotes needed a number 1 centerman for so long. They tried with Strome, didn't work out. They're trying with Hayton, but Hayton's not going to be the future number 1 center for the Coyotes. This draft upcoming is going to be the draft where the Coyotes get a centerman and draft a lot of centermen. I'm expecting Coyotes to draft 2 or 3 centermen in the first 2 rounds. Their center depth is pretty brutal. They don't have much in the pipeline, and they need a centerman to take that number 1 centerman role and be an established number 1 centerman in the league, not just for the Coyotes. It needs to be a number 1 centerman across the league on any team. So, hopefully this year it's a bit better. They don't lose out to luck. They've changed the lottery rules a lot, so this will never happen again. It will never be 3 teams winning the first 3 spots. The lottery this year is only for the 2 spots, the first 2 spots, and a team can only drop 2 positions. So if the Coyotes finish last, if they have the worst luck possible, they're picking 3rd. If they finish second last and have the worst luck possible, they pick 4th. So they're a bit protected now in terms of luck. We'll see what happens. This draft is pretty deep, and the first top, 5 players are pretty highly touted, and a lot of them are centermen. So, for this draft, they're protected from the lottery odds, they're protected from luck, and even if they pick the wrong player, let's say 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th overall, they have 6 more picks in the top 64 to correct that mistake. And even if, the centerman they pick sort of turns out like Hayton, where it's a bit of a longer development, those other picks could supplement that player and fill up the roster a bit more, where they could wait. It's not like a desperate, let's say they pick Shane Wright, and out of the gate, it's like Barrett Hayton. He's not lighting the league on fire. Or Alexis Lafreniere, who's more of a recent example. He's not lighting the league on fire. Sure, he's not playing top 3 or top 6 minutes because the Rangers are stacked as it is. So, if they need to take a longer time with their first pick in the draft, they have all these other picks to develop, and maybe some of them might progress faster. If you look at Columbus, their second pick in the first round last season, Cole Sillinger, has been in the NHL this whole season, whereas their first pick, I believe, was 5th overall. His name might be Kent Johnson. He hasn't, played in the NHL. I think he just made his debut last week or something. He might have been a college prospect, which is why Sillinger was able to make the jump to the NHL first. But, examples like that where down in the draft order they might take the jump faster than the player picked before them. Look at J.J. Moser, picked last summer, and he's already a mainstay on the Coyotes defense. So if they miss with that first pick, with the amount of picks they have, the amount of the darts they can throw, they can get a bullseye with a lot of the other picks if it takes longer for that first pick to develop. But that was a huge segue. Okay, so they picked Hayden fifth, and then Kevin Ball in the second round. Again, only 2 picks in the first 2 rounds. So that's the glaring issue for me. If the Coyotes knew they were tanking here, they had to bounce back. This was a good draft. So they knew they were tanking here and here. This was like one of the worst starts in Coyotes history next to this season. So these 2 drafts, the management should have known we should accumulate the amount. We should accumulate the amount of draft picks possible to increase our odds, because as luck would have it, the luck turned on them. They had bad luck in both these drafts, and also they didn't pick well either. So they had both of those against them in these 2 drafts. So, this season, if they have bad luck and they pick wrong, they have so many other picks where if they pick wrong for all 7 of those picks, I mean, that's a total disaster. And the fact that they revamped their whole scouting department, getting scouts from Buffalo and the Avalanche, and just getting established scouts who have been in the league for a very long time. These are experienced scouts and good NHL professional executives, so they should be making the right picks, at least for half of the 7 picks they have in the first round. So a bit of a long one, but the sentiment around this video and around moving forward to this year's draft is that even if they have bad luck and pick wrong, they have a backup plan, and they put themselves in a position where it's kind of hard to fail, whereas these other draft years, luck turned against them and they didn't prepare for the worst case scenario. And thankfully, Bill Armstrong and his team have prepared for the worst case scenario this draft. So I think it's good. I'm really hopeful for this upcoming draft. But, these drafts gnaw at me at the back of my mind that, it could go wrong in the worst possible way. But we just got to hope and hang on to that hope. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, spread the word. And as always, thank you for your support.